Hello and welcome back to another video. So this time we are going to be talking about the Bladespire Karabor issue, but it's not going to be about any of the arguments that I've really seen be presented. It's not about anything that Lore talked about on the forum post, his infamous forum post. It's not about the visuals, it's not about PvP. It's about consolidation and how I feel sticking everything in one place could be a little bit of a problem. And now I'm going to first talk about the Warlords of Draenor related issues, and then I think I'll just go on a little bit of a ramble about the history of Warcraft, how we've consolidated a lot of things over time, and just various things like that. But anyway, first of all, the Karabor Bladespire issue. Just an ultra quick little reminder for those of you who are not initiated, Karabor and Bladespire are no longer the faction hubs. They are moving them to smaller, at least look smaller, little sort of mini city staging areas on Ashran, and it appears as if the art assets for these cities are going to be based sort of off the general Alliance and Horde themes that we're all pretty used to. And while that does suck, again, it's not really what I'm going to be talking about in this video. So previously, the way things would have been if Bladespire and Karabor were still the main cities, is that you would have been maybe hanging out more in Bladespire, Karabor, and your garrison. Now, I think that would have actually been okay. I know that they were all in the same zone, but I sort of like the idea of you having the main Draenor city and then your little place off to the side. But anyway, again, let's get back on topic. Consolidation. Well, by moving all of the portals and all of the various things into Ashran, what they've essentially done is made it so that if you want to do some PvP, well, that's fine. You step out the front door. You want to do some PvE, well, then you sit in a queue. You want to go to your garrison, you take one portal to your garrison, then you take a portal back. Basically, you're always in Ashran. Always. There's not really much of a reason other than, say, doing the world versus, not world versus world, the exploration stuff that you can do. And I think that that's actually going to be very valuable in the expansion, but again, this just sort of smells like the Cataclysm problem to me, where everyone was stuck in Stormwind. Just that, at least with the whole Stormwind situation, you could still sort of head off to the little staging grounds in Tul Barad and do your PvP there. And the same thing actually goes for Dalaran. You didn't directly do your PvP in Dalaran, you had to fly over to Wintergrasp and get involved there, or at least I'll meet up in the Dalaran portal. And I thought that was pretty cool, because it geographically split your gameplay. You felt like you were hopping across the world a little bit more. And I know that, really, when you get down to it, right, if the faction cities were still Bladespire and Karabor, sure, Ashran would just be a portal away, and it wouldn't be massively different in terms of the actual gameplay that you do, but there are things larger than the gameplay that people don't really notice because they're so big. You know, those day-to-day sort of patterns in the game that you don't really think about, but they certainly have an effect on how enjoyable the game is. If you feel like you're some sort of globe-trotting badass that's kicking arse on all four corners of Draenor, then maybe you're going to enjoy that kind of, role-playing / power fantasy thing that games like to go for a little bit more, rather than you're just the guy who always hangs out in Ashran, always stays there, maybe ventures out the front door to do a little bit of PvP, goes to your garrison, but in general is stuck on Ashran. Alright, so with that said, I think there's another good point, and that is that perhaps it would be good if locations were perhaps a little bit more segregated into their gameplay. So, just the example of, you go to Ashran to do PvP, you go to your garrison to do PvE, to do garrison stuff, you go to dungeons and raids to do your PvE, you head off into the world to do a daily quest. That's, PvE stuff. That's sort of segregating different parts of the gameplay off into various parts of the world, so you're always traveling around the place. Now, I think that Warlords is going to do a better job of that in the PvE perspective, because we are going to be running about the place and doing all these, world exploration things and, the big rare mobs and all that stuff, which seems to be really enjoyable. And I just think that the more examples of that, the better. So if PvP could also just have its own little area where you can go off and just have your PvP-centric fun, then it's better. And then just, of course, the idea of always traveling about the place, always having things being fresh and interesting and moving around, I just think that's really important. Plus, it would be nice if, perhaps when you went to Ashran, you would maybe expect to be surrounded by PvPers, your fellow PvPing badasses. Whereas now it's just kind of going to be this one sort of homogenized place that's full of portals and where everyone just sort of sits about and waits for queues and maybe ventures out the front door and just, sits around and rots a little bit, rather than having the extra motion that I think Karabor and Bladespire would bring. Plus, just another thing about this whole consolidation issue is, that the more you consolidate your game's like locations and things like that, well, what you're actually doing is making it so that the amount of, let's just say, unique tile sets per hour, like unique graphics and all that the player sees, is vastly reduced. At least if I was hopping between 3 or 4 vastly different looking places, it would be awesome. But you know what's going to happen now, right? I'm going to be hopping between my Alliance-themed Ashran base and then my Alliance-themed bloody garrison. I'm going to be sitting around in Alliance stuff all day. I'm going to miss out on having those really cool Draenor visuals, and I know I said that I wouldn't be talking about visuals per se, but I think this is definitely where consolidating and visuals are sort of intermingled and intertwined. So yeah, the more places that we have to go, then the more things we can see per hour, which just keeps things a little bit more visually interesting. I think after a year and a half of this expansion, if Ashran and the garrison are the only main hubs we're going to get, it's going to be very dull. We've already had plenty of those hubs. The humans, we live in Stormwind. Look at it, it's a big fantasy castle. You know, the Northrend style alliance stuff, the 5.1 style alliance stuff, it all feels the same. Okay, sure, some of those screenshots that I showed you in the video earlier certainly do look a little bit more higher detail, but it's still the same aesthetic and feel. And I just couldn't be bothered to do that again. I mean, I'm okay with it being there for the PvP zone. I actually think it fits the PvP zone. That's where the Alliance go and make their Alliance-style base. And that's fine. Leave it for the PvP, though. Allow people who want to do various parts of the game to have various locations with various art sets and things like that, so that their gameplay is just kept a little bit more interesting, and both in terms of you seeing new places and moving around the place, but then, just keeping it pretty in the eyes. Okay, so that's the Warlords of Draenor themed part of this discussion covered. Essentially, you done gone goofed, Blizzard. We want more than 2 places to go to. Now, let's just talk about some of the consolidation and things like that have happened previously in the game. Chances of me covering everything are very low, but I just think it's an okay little ramble to have at the end of this video, isn't it? Because, who wants a short, concise, and well-produced video? I do this too often. Anyway, so if we go way, way back into vanilla, there was a stage when Ironforge had the only bank that was really popular. So once auction house. So what happened is that everyone just stuck in Ironforge. Not much else happened. Then they opened up the auction houses and stuff like that, and I definitely feel like there was a lot of people in Ironforge and a lot of people in Stormwind. That was really cool, and it meant that if you for some reason had to jump off to Ironforge, then you could hop in the little tram, and I think there was really good gameplay there. And I don't know, that whole faction city setup was pretty good back in the day. But then, Cataclysm came, it put portals in Stormwind, and what Blizzard did is consolidated. They consolidated everything into one place, into one Stormwind, which took away player choice. It meant that people were stuck in one place, and you know what, as an Alliance player, I'm bored shitless of Stormwind. Look, look, your generic white fantasy city, whatever, I'm bored of it. I just don't care anymore. I've seen that place for so long because Blizzard has made it the optimal place to be in. They've consolidated gameplay and various things into one city, therefore I've got bored of it. Now, there were also some other issues, right, that fed into that. And I think that queues have kept people in cities. That's absolutely true. And honestly, my personal opinion is you should be able to queue for a normal dungeon. You should be able to, the Warlords of Draenor normal dungeons, which are going to be a little bit like the Pandaria Heroics. But then I think that actually the Warlords of Draenor Heroic dungeons should not be on a match-made queue. Because, again, we'd be able to go out into the world to see things, it's less consolidation, and your game actually feels like it's more of this giant explorable place that wants to kill you, instead of a menu system. Because I think while I've been talking a lot about consolidation in terms of in-game locations, consolidating mechanics into UI elements that are always present no matter where you are in the world is just bad design. It takes away a lot from the game in my opinion. So yes, the queue stuff didn't help. The way tabards worked meant that in Cataclysm you could just park yourself in Stormwind, chain queue dungeons, and that would basically circumvent rep grinds and, actually seeing those reputation factions. So that was a little bit unfortunate. Now, another thing that I think did actually play in their favor for the other expansions in the game is the massive world PvP zones like Wintergrasp and Tulparad. I think Wintergrasp worked really nicely because you'd be all sitting there in Dalaran, and Wintergrass would come up, someone on your server would organize a raid group, and then you'd all head off through the portal on your merry way to PvP land where you could PvP in the PvP place full of PvP players, and that was really fun. Instead of just in Warlords, where everyone's going to be like, oh yeah, we're in Ashran, oh, well, I suppose we should probably step out the door then, yeah, let's go do that. Oh, wait, we're still in the same tile set. You know, one of the nice things about PvPing in Wintergrasp that maybe people didn't notice is that when you decided to go and do a Wintergrasp, you were taken to a new location that looked different, it was visually interesting, and more importantly, it was a break in visual pace. I don't think that Dalaran really wore out too much on people, because in general, I thought that I was always going somewhere interesting in that expansion, and certainly I think having Wintergrass being a separate place absolutely helped. Now, the same is true in Cataclysm with Tul Barad, though I think honestly my main problem with Tul Barad is that it was crap, and that's why I was never too much of a fan of it, though certainly the island was nice, and I liked how they tied in daily quests and things like that with it. So yeah, that's basically the kind of main consolidation points I wanted to talk about. Basically, when they consolidate everything into one place, the game just gets more boring. You don't see as many things, you don't do as many unique things, you're just sitting there in the dull monotony of another Alliance/Horde base that honestly, based on the work in progress art, looks just a tad generic. So let me know what your thoughts are, and be sure to check out yesterday's video. It talks a little bit more about the actual visual issue of, well, you know, these places look different and awesome, whereas this one's certainly more about consolidation, and I guess this is maybe more of a kind of high-level game design concept-ish video, where the other one is certainly tackling it from the perspective of my own personal desires as a player. So, yep, that's that for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it interesting and all those great things. If you did, that like button certainly helps, and be sure to let me know what you thought in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.